everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on just-in-time tactical tips for optimizing your e-commerce site so you can sell more this holiday season. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Tim Ash. Many of you will know Tim as the author of the best-selling book, Landing Page Optimization, which, believe it or not, was first published in 2008. It literally introduced the concept of conversion optimization to many marketers for the first time. But Tim's also the CEO of Site Tuners and the founder of the International Conversion Conference event series. And over the year, he's helped to make huge improvements to e-commerce sites of many international brands. And he's been invited to present at retail and e-commerce events around the world. In fact, he just returned from keynoting at the Think Global Retail Conference last week. I'm sure you're all just as excited as I am to hear what Tim has in store for us today. So with no further delay, let me pass the controls over to Tim Ash.
Well, thanks very much, Casey. Casey Murphy is our Director of Marketing and runs the show around here and puts together this great webinar series. I'm very excited to be on with you. And just to give you a little bit of context for those of you that aren't familiar with Site Tuners, we're a strategic conversion rate optimization agency based in San Diego, although we work with companies of all sizes and across all industries across the world. We can help with tactical, quick fixes to full redesigns of your site to helping you develop your own CRO team and culture inside of your company. And as I mentioned, you've probably recognized some of these clients that we have worldwide, but I want to do particular focus on our kind of e-commerce clients today. We've worked with over 200 e-commerce companies to help them improve their online catalogs, and as Casey mentioned, also do quite a bit of speaking from Sao Paulo to Sydney on the topic. But today I just want to jump right in and talk about these tactics. For many of you, this is high season. For many of you, fourth quarter is what you live and die by. So we're going to cover very quickly these 8 tactics. These are things that you should be able to implement in a matter of a few minutes or a few hours, depending on how smart you and your web development folks are. But all of this should be very, very actionable. And at the end of the webinar, like Casey said, I'd like to leave some questions, time for questions. So as we go along, please tweet the crap out of it. You see the hashtags at the bottom of most of the text slides in the lower right. And also enter your questions in the question pane on the GoToWebinar, and we'll get to as many of those as we can at the end. All right, so let's jump in. The very first tactic that I want to talk about is removing page background distractions. Now, this next page is an example of what not to do. There's going to be lots of those. So as you can see, it's horsesupplies.com, so they're trying to be very folksy and have that barn lake feel. So what do? They put photorealistic pictures of kind of boards as the background of their page. Now, on one level, that's right. You want the edges and the periphery of the page to be darker than the high contrast middle of the page. But our eyes think of the world as kind of a 3D movie, and I'll come back to that idea. So we're navigating through a 3D experience, and vision is one of the strongest senses that we have. Over half of our brain is devoted to that. So anywhere where we can find meaningful information to help us survive and thrive, we'll look for it. And guess what? Boring white pages aren't necessarily where we look. We look at photorealistic details. So in this case, we're looking at the grain of the wood. Now, let me ask you a simple question. Is that where you want me to be looking? Or would you rather I looked at the inside of the page? Now, here's a similar sort of company. You can see from their page, the inside still high contrast and white, and the outside is dull gray. Folks, I really suggest you use something dull on the outside, because look at how our eyes automatically go into the body of the page. That's where you want them looking. You want them looking at the page, not the periphery. So when we say something recedes into the background, think of that phrase. It literally means it should just not be center of our vision and a little bit darker and not distracting at all. It needs to recede. So some companies violently violate this rule. Here's an example of what the Armani Exchange site looked like when I took a snapshot of it for the second edition of my book. Now, where's the page? First of all, you have a hard time even figuring that out. most of this page, at least on the wide, well, these 24-inch monitor that I took this shot on, is taken up by essentially giant billboards, and we all know how much fashion brands love their giant, high-resolution, beautiful model photo shoots. And they are good-looking kids, don't get me wrong, but the point is I'm looking at the pair on the left and I'm looking at the pair on the right, and I'm not paying much attention to the much smaller people and the relatively boring text in the middle of the page. So I kind of called them out on it, and it so happened I was speaking at a conference where they were, and I'm proud to say that they've done something about it. And so here's what their site looked like when I spoke at the conference. As you can see, they made the background white, and the only place you can look or should look is in the body of the page. So problem solved. So a lot of you have created this problem. You might be a niche kind of store with a very specific look and feel. You're trying to attract your audience, but the place to kind of embellish is not outside the boundaries of the page. So our eyes automatically look for texture, for color, for contrast, for detail, and especially we pay attention to pictures of people. So if you have anything resembling photorealistic people on the outside of your page, on the periphery, you have a big problem. You have a giant attention leak in your website. So keep the sides of the page neutral and boring. We're going to come back to this theme. As you'll see, several of my suggestions are to remove various things. So decluttering and creating a simplicity in your site is actually what makes your cash register ring in many cases. All right, so that was our very first tactic, removing distractions on the outside of your page. Here's one that's going to go against the grain for many of you, and I know that there'll be violent disagreement. I'll be glad to take it up with you in the Q&A. I don't think you should have products on the homepage of your e-commerce catalog. There, I've said it. Now, what do I mean? That seems like a pretty extreme stance. Well, let me show you what it's like in reality when you do have that. This is Adorama. It's a very large, started out as brick and mortar store, but does a very significant volume of business in photography supplies online. I'm a big photography hobbyist, so this is near and dear to my heart. But you get to their catalog, and they probably, I'm guessing, sell 100,000 unique items or SKUs. And you look at their homepage. When the shot was taken, they basically, in the middle, in the body of their page, on the left they have navigation, on the right they have rotating banner ads. I'm not a big fan of those either, but in the body of the page they have items, specific items. And that's the equivalent of saying, hey, out of the 100,000 things we sell, we know you really want these 12. Well, why? I mean, even if those represent your best-selling items, it's still likely a very tiny fraction of the overall inventory that you have and the things that people are likely to be looking for. So should I buy the walk stool in the upper left here? No, maybe I should get this other walk stool because it's $10 cheaper. You know what? I don't even want a walk stool at all. It's just kind of a bizarre accessory, and why it's being featured on the homepage instead of something more useful is beyond me, frankly. And let me just, so you're probably thinking, okay, Tim, how can you not have products on a homepage? Well, it's very simple. You have to have the discipline to not try to sell me anything on the homepage. You have to have the discipline to get me closer to my goal. So the function of your homepage, if you want to think of it this way, is to get me to the set of products that I'm interested in. It's not to sell me anything on this page. Now, unless the exceptions to this would be a company like Apple. So when they release a major new item like the iPhone 6, well, that product launch, which is probably $1 billion product launch worldwide, takes over their whole experience. That's when you get to their site, you just see the iPhone 6 and tiny text links probably for other products that they carry during that launch. But that's not the case with the rest of us. I mean, we carry larger product lines. We don't have that kind of brand affinity, and we don't have that kind of major launch event happening typically. It's just an ongoing rolling set of things that we sell. So what's the alternative? If you're not going to push products on your homepage, well, this is I guess you could say a competitor, or this sell more kind of high-end and professional equipment, but this is the body of the homepage of B&H Photo. and they probably sell a comparable array of stuff in terms of the number of unique items. But what they've done is they've gotten rid of any product level things. Do you see there are no individual products here in the body of their page? They're composite images which have the property of what I call categoryness. Now I know that's not a real word, but you heard it here first. So two or more items composited together into one image. So for example, if you're looking at the Pro Audio category, you see a stereo microphone and a mixing board, and that represents Pro Audio. If you're looking for home entertainment and you have a surround speakers and an LCD TV or flat screen TV, well then you know that that represents that category. It's pretty easy to zero in on what you want. But you're not confusing it, and this is the important thing, with individual items. So many of you, if you have a category, you should represent it with a photo collage, a composited image with 2 to 3 to 4 items that show the extremes of the items available in that category, or that are most, how would you say, characteristic or prototypical, but not to be confused with individual items, and that's really, really important. So it doesn't really matter if you have physical objects versus more intangible categories. The important thing is to not look like physical objects. So for example, Red Envelopes sells a bunch of different personalized gift products. And as you can see on their site here, I'm not a huge fan of that giant shop arrivals, which is part of a rotating banner on top. We'll get to that separately. But if you see that second row along the page, what they have here is their category level, kind of, I guess what you'd call them, cards or tiles. So it's laid out in a grid, and it's clear, although there are physical objects behind it, because of the way that they've kind of blurred them out or put them in the background. They have the little label cards on top of it. It's clear that those are categories. You're not confusing, for example, the very right-hand one, new for home. You're not thinking you're buying an ice bucket. Okay, you understand that somehow, to them anyway, with that choice of that picture, represents the home category. So no individual products on this page, at least on the visible part of the page. I know a lot of companies cheat and they put featured products further down the page, but I'm not as concerned about that, because if you have to scroll to see it, chances are it's not going to happen anyway on the home page. It's really important to get the highest level kind of important categories above the fold, above the visual fold as much as possible. Which goes to a related point. You don't necessarily have to have equal, I guess you could say, visual representation or emphasis for your product categories. You can think of it more like an eye chart at the doctor. You know, so the letters at the top are giant, and as you go down the eye chart, they get smaller and smaller. You can do the same thing. If you have a massive category that represents 80% of your sales, it should get massive space. A proportional space or appropriate space, and maybe there you even have deeper links to subcategories, because you kind of expand the resolution on that, but it's still for navigation. You're still not putting individual items in. All right, well, so to kind of sum up this idea, you don't have products on the home page. Having them on the home page is premature. The primary purpose of the home page is to give people a map of the world, to orient them, so that they can dive down deeper into categories and subcategories and get closer to a set of products that they're interested in. So the goal of the homepage, you know, tweet this, the goal of an e-commerce homepage is to get people off the homepage. If you're doing that effectively, other than by bouncing, then that's exactly what you want. It's not to sell them an item. And again, if you're going to make category images, make sure they're either composites representing multiple items, or visually different from how you represent individual items. All right, let's go on to my third tactical tip for you, which is to limit choice. Now, all of us kind of want to be Walmart and Amazon when we grow up. They're the giants of the e-commerce space, of course, especially Amazon. Walmart's a giant in the physical world as well. But you know, what is their value proposition? Well, it's, you know, low prices and it's massive selection. We've got everything. How many times have you caught yourself as a niche retailer probably saying, we're the Amazon of jogging strollers or fine French champagnes or whatever your niche happens to be. We sell everything in that category. Of course you do. And yeah, we all know it's probably manufactured in China and drop shipped directly, so you can stock a bazillion whatevers they are. I mean, I was talking to one guy who had, in his e-store, had 80 varieties of selfie sticks. I kid you not, 80 varieties of selfie sticks. Not sure why you need all those, but okay. Is that a good idea, though? That's the thing that we have to question. And one of the things that we know is that it's very often not a good idea to overwhelm people. And it's especially bad when things aren't visual. Let me show you kind of the sort of not as bad case. So I was looking for area rugs for my house remodel, and I believe this was on Wayfair, I think, and I got to a page with the kind of rugs that I wanted. Now I'm a bit of a power user, and I'll come back to that, so I was actually using the filtering on the left, and I got it to certain size rugs, certain shape, and so on. And this is kind of seems pretty helpful, right? You could easily choose or zero in on which of these rugs you'd be interested in. Oh, but wait, it gets worse. That, folks, was just the top of the page. On the left, I'm showing you the whole page. Guess what? There were 16 of these whole pages with 96 rugs each on each one. Now, what do you expect me to do? Do you expect me to just plow through that? Is choice really good? Am I supposed to do this endless scrolling and you hope I'll stumble onto the one I really, really want? How do I remember the ones above it that I kind of liked and can't even see anymore, and they're slowly fading into my memory? So this would be the web equivalent of saying, okay, I want to get from New York to Los Angeles. Well, let's drive to Kansas City in the middle of the country and drop me off, and I'll walk the rest of the way there. I'll just page through all of these other items. And I mean, your role is really to help me understand the important parts of the buying decision, and then to guide me towards the right products, just like you would in a real store. So let me give you an alternative experience. Now, this might be a little bit more of a strategic tip than a tactical one, but for many categories which require complex trade-offs or choices, you can take the same filtering that you're seeing here on the left-hand side of this page, refine your search, and turn that into kind of a step-by-step wizard. You already have all the machinery to do that, in effect, in your advanced filtered search, but no one's using that filtered search. And again, you might violently disagree and would get into a bar fight about it, but I challenge you to look at your web analytics. Probably only 2 to 3% of your website visitors are using filtering, even when you have a lot of items. The rest are just suffering by having to wade through these endless choices. And again, you're saying, Tim, how can this be? Well, it's very simple. You are all power users of your website. You know exactly how to use it, how to get maximum kind of effect out of it. You've spent thousands of hours interacting with it. You're an expert level user of your own site. Most people, for them, it's a huge cognitive investment to even understand the options available on the left, much less to filter by them. And if you have kind of bad filtering, they've had so many bad experiences with similar kinds of filtering advanced searches that they're going to shy away from it. It's a big ask to ask them to understand all of the choices and to pick from them. And even illogical things, for example, like this price here. $50 to $100, $100 to $200. Yeah, why don't you say under $100, under $200, under $300? I mean, why do I want to pay $100 to $200? No, if it was $75, that'd be just great. But they have their little buckets because that's how their logical engineers designed that search engine and that advanced search. But I have to think about it. It doesn't necessarily make intuitive sense, even if you're very used to online catalogs. So what's the alternative? Again, the alternative is to take this same kind of questions that we're asking in the advanced search, but do them more like somebody greeting you in a store. So recently we bought a sofa sleeper. We're looking for a sofa sleeper. Let me imagine you were in the market for a sofa sleeper, and the first thing that you'd see is you came in a store and just like a real person talking to you, what exactly is, what style do you like? modern or traditional? Now, pretty much all of us can answer that. There's very few transitional kind of people, so you have probably a preference for one or the other. All right, well, next step I would ask is, well, what material do you want it made out of? Some of us have a strong preference for leather. Others don't like to have their thighs stick to it on hot summer days. They prefer fabric. Yeah, other people have cats who scratch the crap out of that fabric couch, so they're not big fans of fabric or the care that it requires or the staining. So, but again, all of us have affinities and aversions built into our brain. We know what we like and what we don't like. It doesn't have to be logical, but it's a simple choice. And so this is in a way filtering, right? What are we doing? We're going down, we're asking a structured set of questions. Or what are you going to do with the sofa sleeper? What environment is going to be in? All of us, after taking a quick glance at this page, if we're looking for a sofa sleeper, knowing what room it goes into, can pick one of these choices. I don't want a sofa because of whatever reason, or I need a day bed, or futon reminds me too much of my college days, or I need more sitting area, so I want a chaise lounge. Incidentally, we ended up getting the IKEA blue one on the lower right. Very clever. This part folds out and you get a full queen-size bed and there's storage inside of it, and go IKEA. Okay, but you get the point. This was the same kind of a guided experience that's based on the same choices you already have in your database because you've built your advanced search. It's just a matter of putting it into a series of popover windows and asking those in sequence in human language and perhaps with a few small illustrations. So what you need to know about this kind of limiting choice is that people have very limited short-term memory. In fact, we can only keep about 4 items in non-rehearsed short-term memory, which, not coincidentally, is the longest string of digits you'll see in telephone numbers. It's designed for easier memorization. So unless you have very, very diverse items and they're easily scannable, this kind of infinite scrolling idea of Pinterest, there you're just kind of serendipitously looking for something you might find interesting. But if you're on task in an e-commerce scenario and these long scrolling lists of images, a lot of them substantially similar, I'll get to that as a separate point, then it's really not the right way to go. So for your important categories, when it's appropriate, when you can guide me to something with a few simple questions that are based on your advanced navigation, use wizards and not filtering. And just as a general shout out, when you do redesign your site completely and do it right, for your catalog navigation, go deeper and narrower. Don't have lots and lots of options at the top level of the menu. It's better to have 3 or 4 deep but narrow choices, each one maybe no more than 4 to 6 subcategories at a time, and then only after 3 or 4 clicks expose a set of matching items that precisely match my needs. All right, now this next one is a problem. The homepage of online catalogs is often one of the biggest problem areas, and that's because it's a course designed by committee. It's a compromise. Everybody wants to get their fingers on the homepage. And one of the things is you have brand managers or division heads, or again, those pesky product launch people, or, oh, we got to feature the following brand today or some special promotion. What happens is the promotions take over the whole experience. Here's an example. Now, I was shopping very late on Christmas Eve on the Lowe's Home Improvement website, and this was their homepage. Yes, the workshop's still open. Pick up your online orders within 20 minutes. The whole thing is about the fact that they're open on Christmas Day. Well, I'm assuming if you're a website, you're open 24/7, 365. That's not exactly new news, folks. But somebody said, oh, we got to put this here. And what is not there? Well, the very thing that I was talking about before, top-level category navigation. Those tiles are gone. I'm expected to use that horrible menu with the drop-downs and the flyouts and then try to figure that out instead of in the body of the page having that useful navigation. And again, folks, it's not enough, let me say this twice, it's not enough to have your categories just in your nav bar. If information is important, it needs to be repeated in the body of the homepage in visual laid out form. Okay, you can't expect me to try to go and wrestle with your navigation. That's where I go if there's a failure of your homepage body. Then I'm forced to use navigation. But that's a last resort. Don't make me do it. All right, here's another example of J. Crew's website. Now, take a look at this. 30% off your entire purchase. Again, what happened to the navigation? Well, it's shoved up top into the categories. There's new arrivals and some other navigation stuff on the left, but basically that 30% off takes over everything. Now, it's important that you let me know that you have a 30% off limited time sale. That's great, kind of limited availability, scarcity stuff that makes me want it. But does it need to be done to the exclusion of everything else in the catalog? Does it mean that permanent navigation has no place anymore? I mean, this is a very, very kind of extreme thing, and yet we see this kind of stuff all the time. The promotional takeover, I call it takedown, really, of the home page. Somebody got enough political clout to destroy the permanent navigation of the home page and take the whole thing over just to do their promotion. All right, let's focus on another problem area. And this one is how you represent your products, especially if they're visual products. One of the things that we often have, again, is if we're a specialty retailer, is that we sell similar stuff. Again, maybe it's the 80 selfie sticks, or maybe it's the 250 jogging strollers. Now, some of those things are kind of more heterogeneous or diverse or visually distinctive, but many are not. Many of us are in industries like, say, promotional pens. You ready? Okay, I'm going to ask you to pick a promotional pen you want to buy for your company. Quick, go ahead and do it. Now, what are you going to base it on? You have these tiny little thumbnails. You know, there's a pen in the upper right. Oh, should I get that one because it's a single pen? Is this a fork pack below it? No, that's actually just because there's 4 different pen colors that are available. Should I choose the ones made in the USA with the little flags? That's the only other visual hint I get. And they're all so tiny. They're tiny little thin straight objects right next to each other. I can't get any useful information out of that at all. But if you look kind of in the upper right, you can kind of tell the quality of those 2 pens. You can tell which one's flimsier, which one's easier to hold, which one has the rubber grip, whether it has the push pin on top, all of those things. And it's in the same way, if you presented the information not just as consistent but unhelpful, but actually as distinctive, then people actually get used to it. For example, what kind of pen do you want? I mean, if I showed you the head end of the pen and also the corresponding tail end, so you see if it's got a cap, if it's a screw-on cap or a pull-out cap, or if it's got a push button on the back, I mean, you can certainly tell if you want a fountain pen or if you want a rubber grip or not, or how thick that needs to be, or the size of the ballpoint, if it's a really, really fine pen or a thick pen. All of those things are useful at a certain scale. I mean, that's why you have product detail shots and why you should take ultra-high resolution pictures of your physical products, because if I'm looking at a jacket or a backpack, being able to zoom in and see the quality of the stitching and the quality of the zipper changes qualitatively the kind of information I can get from it. And in the same way, if you're relying on tiny, useless little thumbnails of similar objects, that's not really doing me any favors as a visitor, is it? So what you should be doing is distorting to make things more helpful. Use the visuals to give me clear choices. If they're similar pictures, get rid of them, and then manipulate what's left, the focus, to enlarge or distort the important distinctions among similar seeming objects. Have a flyout or a portion of the picture that shows the uniqueness of it. Okay, and maybe that is, in some cases, made in the USA, and that's an important distinction for some corporate buyers. So having that flag or a best value chevron, or like I said, the physical picture of the object, or kind of a zooming in on a part of it is, but help me make the choice visually. Just because all the stuff you have looks similar at a certain scale doesn't mean you have to stick to that scale, especially in your thumbnail presentation. All right, let's keep rolling right along. This is one of the greatest evils ever, the homepage carousel. Now, I'm not going to ask you to do a poll right now, but many of us are guilty of having this on our home pages. Let me be really clear, in case you're not yet. Get rid of your homepage carousel now. I'll tell you why. Let's do a quick test. This is Best Buy. What do they sell? Quick, think about it. All right, nope. Home carousel blinked. Now what do they sell? Okay, it blinked again 2 seconds later. Now what do they sell? It's like Sears Appliance Central all of a sudden. No, 2 seconds later it's about something else. It's about the Xbox. Actually, no, it's not about the Xbox. It's about the shame of not having a smartphone yet. Okay, well, you've been paying attention. You're smart online marketers. You're tuned into this webinar, hopefully not checking your email while I speak. Let me ask you a simple question. What was under that orange question mark on the previous slide? Well, if I go back, you're going to see it was the Olympus Tough camera. There it is in the lower right. And guess what? It was there on the previous slide and on the previous slide. It was there in the static part of the page on every one of those top carousel changes or flashes. And you know what? You didn't notice it. And that's because we can't override our sense of something changing in the visual field. If there's motion, we react to it. I don't care if it's a slow dissolve or if it's a really, really fast, spastic little jitter. Sometimes it's a back and forth jitter just to keep your attention, as if that's not enough. It's just like rubbernecking on the freeway. When there's something going on, we have to stop. We can't not slow down and look. And the same way with your perception. If there's motion in your visual field, you'll focus on that. So think of it as a hierarchy. Think of it as text, graphics, and motion. Now, text is like a firecracker. Graphics are like a grenade. Motion is what I would call the nuclear option. In the presence of motion, anywhere on your page, text and graphics will not be consumed. Now, sometimes you can make giant text, 200-point font, and in effect it becomes a graphic. But in general, if you're talking about normal text and normal static graphics, compared to anything moving, all the text and graphics are going to lose. You did not literally even see those pictures because your attention kept getting jerked back to the very, very top of the frame with the rotating carousel. All right, so what you need to understand is motion automatically resets our attention. We can't not look. And carousels are also wrong on a lot of different levels. I have a whole section in my landing page optimization book where I talk about it. But no one likes to watch commercials. We're not going to do it on TV with maybe the exception of the Super Bowl and the cute, funny, expensive commercials they have there. But basically, most carousels on home pages are a political solution to the fact that you're not willing to edit. Oh, sure, yeah, we can go from 3 frames to 4 in that carousel. No problem. I can throw your product launch right in there along with all the other unrelated messaging that I'm going to parade in front of someone and hope they notice. But the problem is each one of those takes 2-3 seconds, and by the time you're done watching all of the frames, you've asked someone to devote 10 minutes or 10 seconds of their undivided attention, which on the web is an eternity. No one's going to do it. And by the way, if you think this is bad, an occasional interruption or motion-triggered thing, the current fashion, and I'll politely call it a fashion, are parallax background videos. It's actually having videos either on the sides of your page, which is totally useless, or in the body of your page. So it's constant motion. It's like, remember I told you we're experiencing life as a 3D movie? How can you not watch a movie as it's moving? You have to. And so if there's anything static, like text overlays or static parts of the page or graphics, they don't stand a snowball's chance in hell of being noticed. So do not have any motion-triggered stuff or carousels on your pages. Now, it's a different thing when you're talking about a video viewer. If you want to watch kind of an explanatory video of a product and see exactly how it works, well, that's great, and that's something that's triggered by the visitor. That's something that they initiate and they control and that they ask for. It's supporting information. It doesn't take over the whole experience and is foisted on them without their consent. All right, so I hope I've been really, really clear. Carousels and motion in your e-commerce catalog are evil. Get rid of them today. You're going to make a lot more money. We've done test after test after test of taking that very expensive prime time real estate right at the top of the home page and doing just about anything else with it, presumably having tiled high-level category navigation, we've seen conversion rates skyrocket. So take off, add the navigation, add the category stuff, and put it where your, pardon me, stupid carousel is right now. All right, now there's other kinds of technological gimmicks, not just the parallax videos, but I know a lot of this is a function of the shopping carts you may be using, but if this is a restriction of your cart and you really can't do it any other way, maybe it's time to switch carts. Get rid of gimmicky zooming. Now, what do I mean by that? Here's a pretty reputable website, Hugo Boss, and this is a very nice, high-resolution, professionally done picture of the model wearing the dress, very nice dress, and it gives you this kind of cryptic text instruction underneath, roll over image to zoom in. It doesn't even have the, what do you call it, the magnifying glass with the plus sign, but okay, so let's say that's a pretty strong convention and I know to roll over the image to see it. So this is what happens when I do. A part of it, whatever part I'm rolling over, gets highlighted on the left, and on the right I get this zoom box, and I get to see a close-up of it. Well, I have many problems with this. One is most of us don't look at a part of the dress or an outfit or a product. We want to see the whole thing, just bigger. And this zoom is not that much bigger. Maybe it's linearly about twice as big as the picture on the left, but the picture on the left I still kind of consider a product, well, if not thumbnail, but certainly a small picture of the product. And if I really want to see the drape of the dress and the materials and how thick the fabric is and how well it folds or doesn't fold and drapes, I'm not going to see that on a 2x image. I'd rather see that on a 5x image. So I'd rather have a takeover of the whole page. So if your zoom only goes up by a factor of 1.5 or 2, which I frequently see, that's not good enough. You need 3,000 to 5,000 pixel wide photos of your stuff so that when I look at it on a full screen, that's what I'm seeing. And it should be take over the whole screen. It shouldn't take that zoom box and put it sometimes in another part of the page. Sometimes the zoom just kind of zooms over the image while you're on it. Sometimes, and this is actually the worst of the two, sometimes the zoom box is to the right and the control is on the left. Your mouse is moving on the left and you're seeing a change on the right in the zoom box. And here's the worst part of all, folks. What are we covering up with the zoom box? Yes, we're on a product detail page. Let me go back one slide. You are covering up your call to action area. Yeah, the one that has the add to shopping bag button. So hey, let's make you forget about that for a few seconds. I'm just looking at stuff. No, if you really want me to do the takeover, it should take over the whole page. It should be a full screen light box that lets me, get into a huge amount of detail. That's fine, but then you come back to a properly proportioned page. You don't cover up parts of the page, and this kind of thing on mobile is really deadly if you're doing something similar on mobile where you're just covering up part of the page. I mean, you know how annoying those things are. But a full page takeover on mobile is something we're used to when we watch a video. It's a full page takeover, or even a popover. It takes over the whole page. You can't do this kind of part takeovers, if you will. All right, well, hopefully I've ranted about that enough. Zooming boxes only show you a small part of the object, so take over the whole screen. And never, ever, ever, if you are still insisting on using a zoom box and have no other choice, cover up the call to action block on the product detail page with the zoom box. All right, I want to end on one additional tactic. Now, some of you are manipulating prices. You might have discounts. You might have various competitive pressures. You may actually not even be able to change your prices, but it's important to understand the effect that prices have on people. And so let's go back to evolutionary days and realize one very important thing. The brain piggybacks a lot of things in modern society onto the old parts of the brain that evolved for a different purpose. So guess what? Physical pain is mapped to the same part of the brain as emotional pain. It's true. Actually, if you're breaking up, the best advice I can give you is take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning. Pain relievers will take care of emotional pain. Guess what else? Money is mapped to the same part of the brain as physical pain. The same part. Because money is an abstract concept, but it's also a kind of a proxy for resources. With money, I can get a meal. I can get a roof over my head. I can buy clothes, all those survival level things. So guess what happens when someone tries to take money away from me? I see that as the hoarding of a very finite resource that I had to earn. So money is experienced by the same parts of the brain as physical pain. So when you go to expensive restaurants, this is what you typically see. Menus like this on fine starched linen paper. Guess what it doesn't have on it? A dollar sign. Because the outrageous amounts they're asking, if with a dollar sign in front of it, will make you think of the pain of financial loss. I mean, look at the second from the bottom entry down here. $10 for mac and cheese, really? I mean, if you actually think about that as dollars instead of just the benign number 10, you're not going to be a very happy camper. So the first tip I have for you is, if it's clear that on your page, say a product detail page, the price represents, or sorry, the number represents a price, drop the currency symbol. It won't trigger the pain threshold as quickly. Okay, real quick, which is the bigger number? Quick. Which is the larger amount? Now, if you're like most people, your first blush reaction was to say the number on the left was the larger amount. Of course, Mr. Spock, the logical part of your brain, eventually kicks in and says, no, that's not true. They're exactly the same. Well, thank you, Mr. Spock, except the thing you have to realize about your website visitors is that Mr. Spock is asleep. We're making shortcuts. We're using parts of the brain that are pre-conscious, and we have very good shortcuts for moving around the world. One of the shortcuts is physically bigger things are bigger. So when this box on the left is bigger than this box on the right. Now, does that have anything to do with the value of the number? No. We know that, again, conceptually using language and numbers, that those are the same. But that's not what our brain thinks. And I'm not showing this to you as a side-to-side comparison. If you just saw one or the other, you would be slightly biased by the presentation. So that's really important to understand when you're displaying price, that you should always think about the representation of the number. So another way of putting that is strip out extra characters to make your price seem lower. Okay, we're going to do another quick test. I want you to give me your first reaction to the next one as well. Which price is lower? Aha, the one on the left. Again, Mr. Spock would disagree, but Mr. Spock is not there. 95% of your decisions are made pre-consciously. Mr. Spock is kept out of the equation. Now, why is the one on the left perceived to be lower? Because it's literally lower. The position of it inside of a bounding box that I just decided to do in black is at the bottom. And things that are lower are smaller. Things that are higher are bigger. That's another one of those great, very general shortcuts that our brain and visual system use all the time. So where you position the price inside of the important area, the one you're drawing attention to, can very much skew the perception of whether that's a large amount or not. Now, if we can even magnify that a little bit, in addition to lowering the position of the price, we can de-emphasize in other ways. Look, we made it non-bold. We shoved it not only to the lower position, but the lower left position. Now, which one of those looks like a lower amount you're going to pay? I mean, it's almost hypnotically the one on the left. You can't, even though your brain's telling you those are the same, the primitive parts of your brain are saying, no, they're not. The one on the left is smaller. And so the perception of pain is really, really important. Okay, how about this? Which one's the smallest amount? Well, you know the answer? Again, all three are the same, but the brain is going to perceive the one on the right as being the smallest. You know, you've probably heard of these pricing studies where if you end the number in .99 or .97 or .95, you're going to see a huge win. Well, yes, that's true, but it's not the exact thing you put after the pennies or the dollar sign. Our brain is basically keying on the leading digit. So if I say 2, and over here I show you the 199, you're seeing a 1. You go, well, 2 is bigger than 1. I'm just going to ignore or tune out or de-emphasize the stuff after the dot. It's not important to me. We've learned this behavior over time. And you know, there's another way to do that, which is to make the parts after the dot even smaller. So, you know, just like we're doing over here. So then we're just comparing, again, the leading digit. It's just a 1. It's not, and it's, again, physically a smaller number than the one to the left of it. So we're getting kind of double bang for the buck. So if you've seen that kind of price presentation in grocery stores and on discount sales in other stores, that's why they're using it, because it works, folks, because it works. Now, you might say, Tim, that's irrational, and I would be 100% in agreement with you. And that is the whole point of this pricing section. So let's take a look at a couple more. A special case of this would be if we're looking at if you can control the price and make it drop by a whole digit. That's a special case of what I just showed you. If you can go from $100 to $99, you're way better off. So how much money did we actually lose? 1% of our revenue per visitor. What if you could get your number of visitors to take you up on that 99-cent dollar offer by 5%? Is that a good trade-off? Yeah, you lose 1% in revenue per visitor, you make up 5% in volume. It's a net gain, and I test this, you're going to see that this works over boundaries like this. All right, let's talk about what to do if your price is too high. If your price is high, what do? You chop it into smaller units. Check this out. Less than $1 a day when you prepay annually for $300. Layaway plans, other financing terms, we break it up into smaller time units. Pay this much per month. Some of the worst deals of all are those kind of furniture and high-tech rental, rent to own kind of things. You basically pay for 2 or 3 times the fair value of whatever it is you're buying, but it's chopped up into little pieces, so it makes it more palatable for you. Now, on the other hand, if you are the low price leader and you want to stand out against your competition, then what you do is the opposite. Then you do something like this. Don't overpay by $5,000 over the lifetime of your car. So if you're too expensive, break it down to smaller amounts. If you want to emphasize that you're much cheaper than something else, you lump it together into larger lifetime kind of amounts. All right, well, the final section here, as I told you, the things we need to remember are price activates our loss avoidance mechanism, experiences physical pain. This is a very strong motivator. It's always better to avoid pain than to get upside, usually basically by about a factor of 2 to 1 in terms of its motivation. And how you present the physical price can very much be manipulated. All right, here's a summary of the tactics that we looked over. I want to jump in and give you time to do some Q&A, so please go to the question pane in your GoToWebinar control panel, and let's put some questions in there. In the meantime, I just want to tell you, if you like what you've heard here, I have run since 2010 the International Conversion Conference Series. We've now in the U.S. gone to an annual mega show in Las Vegas. We sold out last May, and 550 people, about a quarter of them are from international, 28 countries worldwide. We're going to do it again. Expect a lot more people, about 25 companies from the conversion ecosystem. If you want to drink from the fire hose, this is the time to do it before we've even announced the agenda. Trust me, you want to be there. So if you're interested in that, go to conversionconference.com and register for the limited time pre-agenda rate, which is going away very quickly here. Only $797 for the whole 2-day show. All right, one other thing I want to leave you with. If you need help with some of this tactical fine-tuning and you want to make more money in the fourth quarter, we're offering free e-commerce funnel reviews. Now that you can see there's certain qualifications here, but we usually have people jump on these sometimes even before the end of the webinar. So I strongly suggest that if you meet those criteria, this is case sensitive, go to the URL that you see there, and we'll hopefully you'll be one of the first 10. We'll be glad to give you some free advice and to tell you how ugly your baby is. Of course, with the intention of making it better. So bit.ly review my funnel with leading caps. All right, well, I think we have time for some Q&A, so I'm going to just kind of jump in and see if we can answer as many of these as we can. I'm going to see, so...
Hey, Tim, I've flagged some questions out there for you, so that should be easy for you to find. As they're coming in, I'll flag them and send them your way.
Okay, a great question from Warren, which is, my thoughts on one-page checkout versus multi-page checkout. Both work. It really depends on the context. What doesn't work is being in the valley of death. That's when you have a not the shortest possible, not the longest possible checkout process. What do I mean by that? A long single form checkout looks overwhelming, but if you say this is it, it's just a one-step checkout, you're one and done. Okay, that's appealing to certain people. If you break it up into bite-sized chunks, each one of them very conceptually simple. Give us your shipping address, give us your mailing address, tell us your credit card, review your order, whatever those are. That often works very well too, because each task or screen is atomic. It can't be broken down any further. It's a simple, conceptually unified thing I'm thinking about on each screen. The worst is when you have maybe a 2 or 3 step checkout process, which is neither short nor conceptually simple. You might combine shipping and billing information on the same page and then go on to another step. So try to stay out of that deadly middle, and I would experiment with both one-page checkouts and really or longer, simple, bite-sized step multiple checkouts. All right, let's talk about this. Anita is asking about the currently in vogue, and I'm glad you used that word, big, fancy, beautiful picture as the homepage pick. They win the award for best website design. Okay, folks, this is the standard to use for any kind of visual decoration, or as I call it, boogers on your page. Is this visual embellishment designed to support an important goal of the page? Directly designed to support a conversion action. On the home page, that would be navigating down to category level pages. On a product detail page, it's to get them to hit that checkout or start checkout button. Whatever the purpose of your page is, does that visual embellishment support it? It's a very simple question. And if the goal is to win design awards or to keep your graphic designers from being bored, I'm sorry, that is nowhere in this computation. That is not a consideration at all. So giant pictures, especially stretchable ones, and like I said, God forbid, parallax video playing in the backgrounds behind your site and distracting you from the page body, just say no. Can I be any clearer about that? All right, I want to address Marcelo's question about SEO. Now this is very important because saying, the SEO guys are asking for more text and the CRO guys are asking for less text on the page. So what do you do there? And I think the answer is that good SEO and conversion should go hand in hand. They used to be enemies. The only thing that Google could read before were long-winded descriptions of things on the page. So keyword stuffing and certain density of keywords and amount of keywords, that was the way to do things. Right now, they're looking much more at not the content of your page, not inbound links. They're looking for actual usefulness of the page. So they're looking at signals of how people use the page. One of the reasons they developed the Google Chrome browser was not actually to make a better browser than Microsoft, although thank goodness that they did, but it's actually to collect the information of what happens post-click on your page. They're scraping all that information. So they know when you instantly bounce back because you didn't find the landing page useful. So it's utility to the visitor, good usability, good conversion, simplicity, single purpose, single-mindedness to the page is actually good for SEO because they're looking at time on page and they're looking through Google Analytics all of your down funnel goals and whether those are hit more frequently, and that's how they decide what's a good page and what's not. So don't be afraid of stripping text down as long as it's making the user experience better. Now having said that, if you need those obligatory 300-400 words on the page, put them down further in the user experience. Don't shape your page around some kind of outdated notion of on-page SEO. That's such a small factor in terms of the overall algorithm these days. All right, I think we have time for a couple more questions. Catherine is asking about what do I think about real-time offers? Are they best on the landing page or the shopping cart while checking out? The real-time offers, just kind of upsells or cross-sells, those should be done before you hit the cart. Now this is really important. A lot of people will put them in the cart. To me, the cart is a very sacred place. You should strip out all your navigation and make it what I call, or in usability, sometimes known as the torpedo tube experience. You go in one end, you go through a linear set of steps, you come out of the other end. There are no distractions, there are no branches, there are no ways out of that experience. So Once somebody starts a checkout, think about when I say sacred, I mean to marketers, the sacred kind of premise of them starting a checkout is you're going to part them from their money. Why would you want to do anything else in the middle of that? So if you're going to upsell them or cross-sell them, do it off of the product detail page. Do it when they do the add to cart and click the add to cart button. Do it at the bottom of the product detail page. You might also be interested in the following. Okay, or let them customize it after they've clicked the cart. It's like, okay, how do you want to configure it, or would you like fries with that? But once they hit the start checkout button, do not molest the animals. Let them pay you instead. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Let's talk, Aaron has a question as well. Our product line is divided into two major groups, regular and signature. In those we have 3 different sizes of similar looking products. How do you recommend we manage a wizard with that? Well, I think you just answered your own question, Aaron. If you have regular and signature, the first thing you have to do is sell me on the value of signature, whatever that means in your world. Okay, so do you want just something made out of plastic, or do you want it made out of cast iron, or whatever constitutes your signature line, and the differences, you have to highlight those. Have me make that decision first. And then sizes, well, okay, then say what are the sizes or who they're appropriate for. This is for kids, this is for women, this is for men. I don't know, maybe that's what your sizes correspond to, or the intended use. Why would I need a certain size? Again, what you're doing is kind of a guided wizard, and then, only then, do you recommend the actual product. So now you've gotten me to a much smaller and appropriate set of products. Of course, I can always back out of that experience and hit the back button and say, oh no, let me change my choice, this is not what I wanted. So don't lock them into a dead end or trap door them so they can't get back anywhere in that experience. But it sounds like you have a pretty natural decomposition, and a wizard would probably be perfect for you. All right, I think we have time for one more question, and that is from Junior Tapper. Can't find a homepage carousel that condenses category tiles above the fold and is also a navigation tool. Can that work if you combine them? No, let me be clear. Get rid of movement and carousels. I'm not saying you can't have promotional stuff on the homepage. Again, don't get me wrong. I don't want to be painted into some kind of extreme corner. I said no products on the homepage. But you can have a balance between branding stuff or special offers, or 25% off store-wide like the J. Crew had. But what you have to do is say leave 50 to 70% of the page as permanent navigation, and then maybe have a bunch of little slices on the right of the page here. I'm going to do a quick drawing here on this page. So here's your page, and if you wanted to have 70% of it be category tiles, that's fine. And then to the right of this line, you might have 25% off, or see our TV ad because it has visual continuity with what you're selling, or your promotional campaign offline. So you can have a number of little special purpose tiles here that are not part of the standard navigation. Okay, but never, ever, ever use carousels. I hope I'm not being too ambiguous. All right, so I'm afraid that we are out of time. I thank you for spending the hour with us, and we hope to see you on another one of our webinars real soon.